It is 6 o'clock and we are now recording, and this is a work session of the Board of Education of Fold Schools. And we will begin tonight with our public hearing agenda and process.
You can see you have a work session agenda there. We include with this first being the public hearing and reviewing agenda for that and the process. And I think that's something we want to take a very close look at, and you approve that for the meeting. And then the second part of it is to give an update of the referendum project, where we're at. I listed 3 topics there. And then number 3 is details about the project budget. So we can go through those tonight as far as a work session and so forth. And so again, Ryan, we have Ryan working with us tonight. And so we'll turn it over to Ryan, and we'll start out with the first agenda. It is looking at our public hearing. So.
Yeah.
Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. I think maybe the easiest way, Jill, if you don't have any objections, is I'll just steal the screen.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Should be able to.
Let me see.
There you go.
Okay, so you guys can see all that. So I put together a quick agenda for the public hearing, and this is for discussion. This isn't set in stone. Part of the process of the public hearing is we want to make sure that the board is hearing what they want to hear from the community and understand, and then what the abilities are at that meeting or thereafter. So I'll just quickly go through this, and again, feel free to jump in. I know there's the raise your hand feature on Zoom. I don't know if I'll actually be looking at that same screen, so if you do want to say something, maybe just say something, but I'll try to pay attention to both screens at the same time. Simple things, obviously we welcome Superintendent Bransoy and Board Chair Hansen will probably have some words, I'm guessing, just to say, thankful people for coming, what they're there for. This will be, just to clarify, both in person and on Zoom, right? So I think the majority of us, I assume, I don't know, will be at the high school gymnasium. But those who aren't, obviously as board members or others, can join via Zoom. Following guidelines with COVID and things like that, obviously people who are going to attend will have to have masks, and we'll keep chairs distanced apart from each other and things like that. So we'll try to make sure we're enforcing all those guidelines that are set forth by the state of Minnesota. And it is capped then. I believe the gathering is capped at 250 people. I don't think that we'll have 250 people. If you all hear something that we're going to have more than 250 people, definitely let us know so we can plan for that and maybe come up with a contingency plan. But I probably assume at most there might be 30, 40 people in attendance, and others via Zoom, obviously. After the introduction, we'll go through a small presentation, or a short presentation, I should say, on the reasons for building closure. So in the public hearing notice that was published in the paper, and that's on your website now, there was four categories that were included but not limited to on the reasons why the district is looking at possibly closing the building. Non-ADA compliance, operational expenditures, costs of repair, and overcapacity, over excess space in the district. Those are the 4 that are listed. So we'll go through a presentation that explains those 4 items as what that means to the district, and then provide public the ability to comment. So this is where you as a board kind of make sure you're understanding the process here and agree with what is written here. We can change this. Like I said, this is not set in stone. There are some guidelines that we obviously need to maintain, but we can definitely talk about it. Since we are in person and on Zoom, adds a little complexity to things to make sure that we're getting all the people's comments that want to comment. So I kind of took a shot at how that might logistically work out. People who are attending in person, it'll be similar to a board meeting where there'll be a sign-up sheet. They'll come into the gym, they'll sign their name, and then, you know, Jill, as you're reading through, as you would in a typical board meeting, we'll just go down the names of the people that put their name on the list. It seems pretty standard there. With COVID and things like that, we'll have to make sure that we have a microphone set up that's kind of away from everybody, so we keep maintaining social distancing. People can remove their mask if they're speaking into the microphone if they desire. They do not have to. Again, make sure that the microphone is far enough away from people so that we're maintaining as safe environment as possible. Get through that list and then go to those attending via Zoom. And this is where it gets a little more, technically complicated. And I'm talking about technology in general, how to get people who want to speak that are on Zoom, on a list that they want to comment. So what I thought might be an easy way to do it is people send an email to Joy that they want to talk, and they'll list their name, and then make sure that they're on the Zoom call when it starts. And I put 5 minutes prior to the start, just so we're not scrambling to see right as the meeting starts if people are there. Again, you can make that time the day before. You can make that time right up to the meeting time. So that's some options for you guys. I put that their camera must be turned on and on themselves, just so that the board can see visually who they're talking to and what they're saying. Again, these aren't rules. For me, it seems a little bit more comfortable that you can actually see and understand what people are presenting if you see their face. Beyond that, the time limit, sorry, I'll keep going on the bullets here. All the comments will be in the topic of closing Bird Island Elementary School. So there is no other topics to cover at this. This is the only topic on the public hearing agenda. So it can be in support of or in opposition to the closing of Bird Island Elementary. Each person can have, I have 2 minutes. I think that's your standard time. You can lengthen that if you wish. Again, Jill, you can have
Excuse me, Ryan. I think we are going to agree to that or look at tonight that as being 3 minutes.
3 minutes
of time.
Okay.
I would like to make it a little more than that if possible, because we run into that problem before on a major topic. We run into where people didn't get enough time to speak. And that really pissed them off a little more. I'd rather have a little more time than not enough.
3 minutes is what was recommended by our attorney. And so that's why we originally had it at 2 minutes. And that's what we normally do for a regular board meeting of our public input. And so in talking with Mr. Rupp, he suggested is kind of the rule of thumb where the guide has been 3 minutes of time. And so that's what his recommendation is.
For the record, Jeff, I agree with you. I think there should be more than 3 minutes for the record.
Are you talking 5? What are we, because we do have to have, if there's quite a few people, we're going to be there for many hours. So, so come up with a number here and let's talk about it. 5 minutes?
5 minutes. You can always, if it takes 4, you can
okay, no yielding time. That's because that's just too hard. That's too hard for me to try to keep track of.
Yeah, that's fine.
Honestly, unless someone else is going to step up and be the timekeeper and cut people off, and say, I'm sorry, that was your 5 minutes. That becomes a lot when you're trying to run something, a meeting or anything else. So
I agree with the 5 minutes, Jill, but no yielding to anybody else. I think that's fair.
It's
Yeah.
just, it's hard to keep track of.
And where are we talking for total time? Like, I mean, are you doing 20 minutes, half hour, as long as people are talking? Like,
I think
How-
yeah. As long as
I-
people are talking, Ryan, is that what you usually see?
Yeah. So yeah. Again, I mean, I totally understand what you guys are saying. Just as I'm looking at this, and it's neither here nor there, but I can imagine there's going to be 20 plus people that are going to speak at 5 minutes. That's over 2 hours.
Mhm.
Not that everybody's going to talk for 5 minutes in total, but that's
Right. And I understand what you're saying, Ryan, but we went through this before, and it actually pissed people off more than it helped. That's why I like the idea of 5 minutes. I mean,
referring to that, I'm just,
if we get 20 people there, we get 20 people there, but it's their time to speak. I mean,
Mhm.
we have to listen, but it's their time to speak. And I think it's very important on this issue to let them talk.
But
Yeah.
the idea is to, with the limited time, is to whoever's speaking to have it planned and thought out and not to ramble on.
I
And
understand
what
that.
you're trying to get is details about the problem, about the issue, and not to just allow it to go on and on. So if
But we don't respond to them either, do we?
no,
Okay. So at that point, at least we got a feeling of the total community. And if they don't talk in that time, I mean, that's their problem, not ours.
so you're,
As I said before, if the person, you brought up the point about preparing speech and things like that, I think most people will do that. So if one person uses 3 minutes, you just move to the next person. Since we're not yielding time, we just move to the next person. Next person uses 5 minutes, next person uses 4 minutes.
Okay, but it's a hard cutoff at 5. Like it's,
Oh, yeah.
I
Not
think
like
somebody,
presidential.
I don't know, like, do we have somebody monitoring the mic then? Ryan, how does this usually work?
That's very subjective. Yes, I mean, you could shut a mic off. Again,
You want to be fair to everybody, and if you're saying
Right.
5 minutes, you have to get your comments in within the 5 minutes. I mean, it's,
Right.
Or you say, or we're going to cut you off, period.
well, I don't want to be, I'm not going to, I mean, I don't want to be rude to anyone or, even take that tone, but it's just like, this is 5 minutes and please plan what you're going to say before then. And hopefully you have it within that time, because yes, I would assume that there are going to be a lot of people that want to speak, and that's great. But yeah, we have to get to the point too.
Something that helps, and it might be a little logistical, but is to have a clock so people can see what they're up against, as opposed to Jill, you watching a clock, maybe sitting on the desk, and
Okay.
and people not really understanding where they are in their time. So if there's, I've used an iPad in the past that has just a big display of a scrolling clock. So as 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, people can see what they're up against and can try to wrap up.
Okay, perfect.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like that idea too.
Okay,
I personally think we'd be fine going 4 minutes. I feel like if people have time to prepare, and I really like the clock idea, because if they know where they're at, then they can make sure that they really get what they want to say in, as opposed to getting cut off and maybe there was like one really important point that they wanted to make.
I agree with you, Tracy. I think that's 80 minutes. If you figure 20 people, 4 times 20 is 80, that's still over an hour and a half.
Right.
Which we want people to talk, but I mean, there's been several times before I got on the board that I would talk, and I got everything I needed to get out into.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that's
And I think too, you're going to have, people on Zoom too that might want to speak. There could be, we've never done this before. So you also kind of have to plan for the unknown, and
great.
with doing Zoom and in person, I'm sure it'll all go great, but you just never
that's
know.
what'll be kind of interesting, because we've never worked with a Zoom public hearing like this. So what you're saying, Tracy, it could go on, but I
Right.
think if we remind people to keep the focus on what the presentation is about and looking at the information as presented, I think that's a good reminder too, is that respecting other people, that allowing other people to speak and instead of dominating, we don't want to do that. So.
Yeah,
Or-
there is the consideration, and yes, that's this public hearing is different than typical board meetings in the fact that you do have to allow everybody to talk. You don't get to set a time limit. But at the same time, if you happen to be the person who's last in line and you can't wait 2 hours to talk, now you're going to limit, you might lose some people that wanted to talk too. So it's really a, no perfect scenario, but that can happen as well. People
I
just
agree
drop
with
off
the 4
because
minutes. Whoops, sorry, Ryan.
no, go ahead.
I am fine with the 4 minutes. I think if we can agree to this and get the word out in advance, people can prepare properly and be
Yes.
able to present the information within that time frame.
And I think the same thing can be true for 5. If we tell them 5, just like we've told, you can think of a couple of people.
So we're kind of in a power struggle right now.
Yes,
3, 4, or 5. I mean, the recommendation started at 2. Recommendation from the lawyer says 3. Some people want 4. Some people want 5. It's honestly, it's another minute. I guess I would like to have everybody speak and get as many people in speaking, but I don't want to be there for 3 hours plus. I just don't, because after a certain amount of time of hearing it, your brain kind of starts to not hear things as well as it should. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but that I know if it goes on too long, that can happen. So I like the 4 minutes. I guess it's a little more than the 3. And I want to add something about no yielding of time to other speakers. I don't want to go down that road. It's too much to keep track of. And so I would hope people can keep their comments, get them down to the main points and make their comments count. So I need to go back a little bit. The sending the email to Joy, I would like that to happen sooner, than prior, like 5 minutes prior. Up to 5 minutes prior. Okay, never mind. So they can do it sooner. I read that wrong. Sorry.
And that is strictly for the Zoom. So I think what you're saying can be very true, Jill, but that'll be following the people who are in attendance will get an opportunity first. And then when those people get finished, then you'll go to the Zoom, and that's when Joy will have that list for us.
I would like to do 10 minutes prior to the start of the meeting, just to have a little bit of time between the two.
So it'd be up to 6:50 then.
Yes. Because I also know I'll get busy admitting people, and so I mean it's coming into Joy, so I'm hoping Joy's going to keep a list of those things. But
I think that's fair, Jill. I understand the complexity of what you have to deal with as chair and having it all organized prior to the start of the meeting. So I think 10 minutes prior to the start would be fair to you.
Thank you. I think so too. I just think it would give a little bit of more cushion between, having a bunch of people at the very last minute, we want to speak, and then, just trying to minimize chaos if we can. It'd be chaos for me. It's not going to be chaos in the meeting. It's just going to be chaos in my brain. So.
And what do they typically have to provide? Just their name? Do they have to provide their address or city they live in, or?
We haven't done this before. So, I mean, in terms of a public hearing, typically just on our Zoom meetings, they, usually just have their name at board meetings, they a lot of times will say where they live, but usually we know almost everybody that comes to speak, so too. But I guess that wouldn't hurt.
Name and town. Name and town.
Just name
Yeah.
and city.
Name
Yeah.
would be fine.
Okay.
Is Sandy on the meeting? I
I'm
don't know, I
here.
can't tell. Are you here?
I'm here. I'm here.
What are you thinking, Sandy, on? I think I've heard from everybody about the time that we're gonna allow people to speak. Are you okay with like the 4 minutes? What are you thinking?
4 or 5 minutes. I mean, like everybody says, I mean, they're gonna say what they want to say. Some are gonna be more, some are gonna be less. So if you give the 5, I think that's fine. Because you're gonna have some people that don't even speak for 2 minutes. They're gonna say their spiel and be done in 1, probably. So, I mean, if you give it even 5, it can always be less. I don't know. Just, I don't really. 4 or 5 is fine with me. I just feel that they'd get more, if they feel more like we cared what they said if they got 5. And if they said less and they were done in less time, then they're done. It doesn't matter.
Right,
But-
right. All right. I'm okay with
I
the
think-
5 minutes as long as it's no yielding of time. It's going to be a hard cutoff because, like I said, we can't
I agree.
sustain something like this for hours and hours and hours. It just,
I agree with the 5 minutes and cut off. No yielding of time.
Hey, Mayor,
They'll have a clock in front of them. They can see the time. I mean, that's fair.
That's fine with me, Jill.
thank you. I will, we'll find someone that will be kind of the iPad clock person and microphone person. So we'll have somebody kind of being the steward of those things. So that will be good.
I think 5 is fine. I think people will find out that it's more important to get a number of people being heard rather than the length. I think you'll find that out. So I think what you're saying, it could vary from 2 to 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I don't, but we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to speak.
Mhm.
And that will, the longer you make that time, the more difficult that will be. So I would leave it there.
I would put in there also for respect of others, please utilize your time wisely.
Well, and hopefully, I mean, hopefully they'll do that. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to,
Use time wisely.
right.
Yeah. I don't think you need to say too much there. Just when Jill starts to say, we all want to get out of here tonight.
Right.
We understand. We want to hear everything everybody has to say, and we respect what you have to say. But we also don't want you to keep repeating what you're saying. Say what you want to say, and because we have a whole lot of people here that need to talk or whatever. Depending on how many you got, you might only have 3, and then
True. And then
whatever. So then it's just like whatever. But at least if we give them 5, they're gonna. We care about what they have to say, and we want them to know we care about what they have to say. And if we say 2 minutes, you're cut off, they're gonna think that maybe we don't really care and we don't want to hear that.
right.
So if some, like we said, some are gonna say 2-minute speeches, some are gonna have 4, some are gonna have 5. But at least if you give them the 5, they have that 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a long time to let somebody talk. But if you don't give them enough time to say what they want to say, they're going to feel like we don't care, and we do care about what they have to say.
Very true. Thank you, Sandy.
I have a question. Maybe where are we at on the agenda?
We're
First item.
talking about the presentation right now, the public comments. That's why I think we want to make sure that you're comfortable with this.
Okay. My question or my concern is, how will people know that they're supposed to sign up 10 minutes before? how will they learn about that?
That'll be, I've told everybody that'll be on our notice of the meeting and be on our website. That's why we're getting this finalized tonight, so that it can be on our website tomorrow.
Okay.
And so then they'll be made available.
Will that also be put in print? Newspaper?
Pardon?
Will this also be put in print in the newspaper or something like that?
I could get it, tomorrow's Tuesday, we can get it in the paper tomorrow, I think.
Might be a good idea.
Yep, I think so. You want us to change that start time, Ryan, to 6:50 then for Joy? Or the start of
Yep, he's got it.
6:50 for get the names in, so good.
And I just added this little note here to clarify the name that they're going to be under and on the Zoom call, because sometimes the person isn't actually the person that's listed in the name. So that's what I mean by that.
Yes.
Jill, to clarify, are you going to mention that out of respect for others? Please hold to your time.
Yeah, I will. Maybe I'll do that in the introduction. You know, I'll write something. I can write something and send it to you guys, and you guys can maybe give some input if you have some other thoughts.
Well, if you put it in here, I mean, it's in writing, they can see it too.
And I don't mean it to sound like we're telling people how to act. I mean, you know, but I guess we kind of are with all of the other things. So,
But if you put it in there, I mean, with respect to others, please stay as close to time allowance as possible or whatever. It don't matter as long as they know about it ahead of time.
But the issue, Jeff, is that at Act 5, they're cut off anyhow.
Right.
I think you'll find out that the people will be respectful. And so
Yeah.
I think if we go through this guidance for at the beginning of the meeting, I think people will understand that and give them the respect that they'll honor it. So I think they'll be all right.
All right, that's fine, whatever.
yeah, I think just a gentle reminder as we
Yep.
begin, you know, just to be respectful of the time of everyone and use your time wisely. So I'll say it better than that, but all right, we're all good with
Okay.
those sections.
Okay.
We haven't gone through everything yet.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm good with that.
And just to clarify, somebody had mentioned it earlier, this is time of listening by the school board, not a discussion. So it's not a question answer session. You're there to simply listen. And I add in here that the in-person comments will go first, followed by Zoom. I don't know why I think that, but does it matter? Do you want to go every other? Do we need to clarify?
We might, I kind of feel like we should possibly go every other. I mean, does that sound,
No, I agree.
No,
no?
I think that's a good idea. Just,
Think of the logistics of that and the time element with that. Is that going to be an issue? That's the only thing I would say.
Okay.
Well, it could be taken either way. I mean, if you go the way you started to say, Dale, where the audience is first, that could also be a deterrent. It could be a deterrent if you go every other one. So it's a catch-22 either way, I think.
Well, I think it would, if you would do like maybe not every other, but like 2 in person, 2 Zoom. I know it's kind of back and forth, but it would be engaging, keeping both audiences engaged. Is
Correct.
what I was thinking.
right.
And Jill, how is it just the technology side with you? I mean, operating it, do you feel like that will, be a burden here and they go back and forth, or just you knowing the system?
Yeah, I'll do the best I can. I don't think it'll be too bad.
Okay.
I'm gonna work with Neil on Wednesday to kind of how it's all going to work out. But I kind of feel like it'd be more fair if we did maybe a couple in person we can even do every other, whatever you guys think. I just think it would keep both audiences engaged if we're, you know, kind of, I mean, the people that are on Zoom maybe are on Zoom because they shouldn't be in person, and it, you know, you want to keep them engaged too and like they're part of it. That's just my thought. So
Either way is fine with me.
I have a question. It says that each person may have up to, no, it says, this is a time for listening by the school board and not a discussion. When will the community have a discussion?
With the school board, John?
School board. No, I mean, because right now it just says that we can get up and stand and get up and say our spiel, what we think, but for any kind of discussions or questions I might have, there isn't a slot for asking questions about what was said. I just don't see that part in it so far.
Ryan, what is this typically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what this is for. So I understand what you're saying, John, is how can you really get, you know, a back and forth going if all you're doing is listening. The way I see this going and why this is for listening only and that there isn't a decision made that night is because you can hear everybody. That you have at this point, it'll be a week at least before your board meeting. You have the opportunity to engage and discuss with specific people that spoke. They can submit questions for you to then discuss at the board meeting on the 26th, and answer some of those questions in your discussion. That's the typical process is your discussion around this item at your board meeting will be that arena for you to say, here's what I heard, here's what I think based on this person's testimony, and et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, but I'm just going to say I'm still leaning strongly leaning towards a place where people can have, or maybe need to be told in some kind of memo out. If you have any concerns and you have any questions, call your local school board person and let that person, him or her, forward that to maybe Mr. Brandside.
I would hope that that's typical for any topic within the district, not just this one.
That's why our emails and our phone numbers are on the website. I mean, but in closing, that is something we could definitely make sure we mention, that, you know, we don't just take questions now. You can email us, you can call us, you know, we're accessible. I mean, our information is out there to answer questions. So please feel free to get a hold of any and all of us. So
again, the concern was that if a person has a question, how does he get it answered? And that's putting it simply.
So you mean at the public hearing? Is that what you're asking? Because that's
the public hearing.
Because if they have a question, that you can email, you can call, and the information of where they do that is on our website, on the school board page. So
will Ryan be there? I mean, is Ryan or Dale going to be there so they could answer some of those questions if they had some certain question to ask?
I think Ryan will be there and I will be there, yes. But I think we've got this is a public hearing. It's for you. You as board members have gone through a lot of information. It's on our website and Ryan has provided a lot of that information for you. Have the data there. And so I think this is a public hearing and it's a purpose of it is for you to step back and hear what's the general public saying. And then from that, you move forward. And it's not a time when you sit and debate. It's a time for you to listen and then put together your thoughts, look at all the information you've gathered for the last 2 years, and then make a decision that's in the best interest of kids in the district. And so And then, like you say, you're always open to sending email, texting questions, calling. I am the type of person that I'd rather have a face-to-face discussion. And so we always promote that. But with the COVID situation today, that makes it difficult. So that limits that too. But I think, remember, this is a meeting, it's a hearing. And so it's for you to gather the information. And then you have to process it. And that's part of, I think, of being an elected official. You've been put in that position by your district. And so I think you can weigh a lot more on these things simply because you've got the info from the past.
So kind of what you've just said, Dale, could that be just kind of put as a summary at the end?
Yes, yes,
If you have questions about something,
right.
these are the people to, and that would be our closing
Right.
for the meeting.
Good idea.
I had said.
And with that being said, Dale, at our next regular board meeting, can we have a slot in there to where we can discuss the questions or whatever the people bring up during this time?
Well, we always have the
Discussion.
section where I talk briefly, and then the board has the opportunity there. So that would be the area where you would have a report on the public hearing and the results of that. And so, yeah.
But I mean, a specific place where we can actually, as a whole board, talk about it.
That would be that area. When you got your committee reports, then that's when your board discussion can take place. We can list that as a topic.
I think we should put it in there as a topic somehow.
Well, I think Dale, what Dale's saying is we have a school board discussion, so it has to say something different. Just if you want.
I would say discuss what was brought up at the public hearing.
That'll be a topic in our committee reports. That'll be a topic there. So that'll be discussion of the results of the public hearing, something like that.
Okay, perfect.
That may take a while then at that point.
Well, also, I think, Jeff.
All of our meetings take a while, Jeff. So.
But I think this is for you as a board member to absorb the things that the general public are telling you.
That I understand. I understand that, Dale, but as a board, where we can discuss it as a board, and maybe Jamie, Tracy have different people that ask questions to them that we would never hear.
Okay, so just one thing. So on, let's see, number 4, it says board discussion action to take place on October 26th. So we're going to have 2 different, I mean, to me, what you're asking and then what is going to be on the agenda, the action part of it. So we're going to have 2 different places where we're going to discuss this, or we're going to, I mean,
I don't care where we discuss it, Jill. I
Okay.
just think it needs to be discussed.
it's going to be on the agenda.
Yeah,
So
Jill, I think, can it just be in the agenda and we can have our normal discussion during the agenda item? Is that?
I like that idea better.
It doesn't make sense to me to repeat it twice. I think having it one spot on the agenda is going to be more effective.
Mhm.
I think we'll see here. I think we'll process what you hear, first of all, and then you move forward from there. And I think you're going to hear different things, and so that means you've got something to think about for a week and process. And if you have questions, I'm available. Lindsay's available, so that's a good time to have that open communication. So, and the general public, if they've got questions, the district office is a place to ask that. And if we can't answer it, we'll get an answer for you. And so some of these questions will probably be difficult to come up with an answer immediately. So that's okay.
Ryan or Dale, either one of you, I don't care. Can you get answers from Mike in case there's financial things that are brought up somehow, like current numbers? That's going to be an issue, I'm afraid.
That'll be part of the district
Yeah.
presentation. Ryan will be putting all that together, the data that he's gone through and has collected. The finances will be a part of it, yes.
Okay.
And so that's going to be all in item number 2. So I think before you get into part number 3, I think you've got to take a look at what is going to be presented, because we've got a lot of information that you've had for 2 years now that will be reviewed, and the finances and the buildings, all of that. Yes.
Okay. I think that's going to be a hot topic, so I would like to know the current numbers.
But I think maybe the simple answer to your question, Jeff, is yes.
Okay.
If
That's
Mike
fine.
needs to get involved, we'll definitely get him involved.
I think
There
it
are
would
questions
be.
we can't answer.
I think it would be beneficial to the district.
Are you talking that night or are you talking like follow-up?
Follow up, not during the hearing.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, so that wasn't like an expectation that we're gonna get Mike on the phone. You know, he might be doing something
No.
else or. Yeah.
No, I think that for the board meeting, I think is when that could take place.
I spoke to Mike and I've already put him on a short leash, so he's got to be ready. So
Yeah.
Whatever you guys think, either way doesn't matter to me.
I just didn't want the expectation to be that we're gonna call him that night and he's gonna answer and he's gonna know, he's gonna be on the spot. I'd rather have, okay, here's the question, if we can't answer it, between Ryan and Mr. Bransoy, we can't answer it, we'll find out the answer and we'll get back to you. And we'll let other people know as well. So.
Well, and again, it's a time for listening. So really, there's not going to be any comments back.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think at the board meeting would be the best. Don't you, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, if that's where we're going to have discussion, yeah, I think that would be a good time to have Mike there if need be. I mean, Ryan's going to have all the numbers anyways. Mike's more, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's more on the like figuring out the this is what it's going to affect and how it's going to affect, which you'll have the bottom line, this is what it's going to cost. And if it's went up or down or stayed the same.
yeah, between Lindsay and myself, we'll have that information. Mike is, like you said, he's a little bit more, tax based.
Yeah.
He that's his area of expertise, is how it's affecting the tax base out there. He obviously knows a lot about the funding formulas and things like that, but I doubt the questions are going to be so much towards that direction as opposed to the nuts and bolts of what's happening with the district, which Lindsay has a lot of that information.
But I would
Either
rather
way.
be prepared than not prepared for that.
Yes, I agree.
As will I.
We all agree with that.
So maybe at the board meeting, I think would be the best place for that to be answered.
We'll have that conversation with Mike and Ryan. That's a team. And so we'll have that conversation and we'll make the recommendation.
And we can base it off too what we get from the public of that night if he
Yes.
needs to be there. If
Sure.
if none of those tax questions are asked, then maybe we don't need to have Mike there. But
Right.
if then yeah, we can piggyback off that.
Ryan, I did appreciate that you put in here, school district is not responsible for technical difficulties of a Zoom speaker. I appreciate that.
Well, it kind of dawned on me. What if everything is going right and then somebody's, we can't hear them. They don't know they're on mute. Their internet goes out. I think it only makes sense that if you.
We'll just blame Jill.
Yeah,
Right.
it's probably my fault anyway, I'm sure.
No. Would be mine.
So.
I wanted to make sure I clarified technical difficulties, not, anything other than that. but yeah.
Okay, anything else we need to add? Because this is process we're talking about right now, basically.
Mhm.
So anything else we need to add to process?
I like how you put that in there, Ryan. That looks good to me.
And
Good.
you still do have, we want to get this up on the website, and if we do an article or not an article, but a
Notice.
newspaper notice or whatever, get it out in the paper. Obviously, if we need to change something, we still can, but we the goal is to get this out to people as quickly as possible so they have time to react and get ready.
Anything else anyone sees that we should add?
Just real quick, we did discuss a little bit if we're gonna go two in-person, two Zoom, two in-person, two Zoom. That is not
Yeah,
in there if we are going to that. So just wanted to bring that up real quick before we move on. Right now we have everybody in person followed by Zoom. So
yeah, how do we want to?
That's your call, Jill. You're the one that's running the Zoom.
Oh, I know. I just,
What would be easier, one or two?
well, I think we should go to one. It's gonna be fun for me, but one in person, one Zoom. I think we just go every other, because we may run out of Zoom people, and then we'll have just all in person. So
Then you can, maybe you could do going every other one. You could get the in-person done, and then going to Zoom, the next person in person can get ready. So
right, yeah,
maybe that'll work best.
it's not a bad idea. I just feel like if you tuned into Zoom and you have to wait 2 hours to speak, it's not entirely fair, to make the process seem more like people are engaged in it, and just as important as the people that are in person. I think it would be maybe the best course of action. So
Jill, if
Good
you need
catch,
some
Melissa.
help that night, I'll be at the meeting, so I can help you if you need some
Okay.
help with something.
I think I would like to have all board members at the meeting if they possibly can. That would be real good. I think we need to be sitting in front and hearing people speak. I think I would really highly recommend everybody to be there.
Can I give you a voucher, Dale?
Hey, it's a Monday.
Can I give you a voucher?
No, I told you it's a Monday. You're in town on Mondays, you told me. That's
I'm
when I
not in town
scheduled.
right now.
great. Anything else on process?
Good catch, Melissa.
Yep.
okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda then, if we're good on process.
Okay, and then number 2, Ryan has put some figures together, some things for us to look at, and this will be just an update of the things that we've been talking about and involving them as we move forward is what we're looking at. So go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, hold on here. I'm gonna have to switch screens. My computer is lagging a little bit here. Hold on. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm getting the right thing up. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Let me guess, you're seeing a timeline.
No.
No,
But-
for construction costs.
Oh, okay. Whoa, this is weird.
Hello, Ryan.
What's that?
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah, hold on one sec. Okay, that probably made it smaller.
Nope.
No, that's good.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, so Yeah, we've, you know, hopefully you have seen a document similar to this, or this looks familiar. This is the type of budgeting document that I've presented at various different time frames as we've moved throughout this process. So you can see I've got all sorts of different dates down here as we've done and changed and presented different things. So as we're getting close to, you know, that November deadline and a February referendum, and the last meeting I was at, we talked about some of the details within the quote unquote project, and we talked about what the quote unquote plan was and what people referred to as the plan, and how that can be taken a little bit different depending on who's asking the question. So I wanted to let you guys know at that previous meeting that some of the final decisions have not been discussed even or finalized for sure. And that's what this process is just a further discussion on what an actual plan, quote unquote, is, and what the costs are involved with that, and what options may be still out there for you guys to consider as a long range plan as we move forward. So I've made it as simple at this point as possible as far as looking at different varieties of options, but that doesn't mean there aren't other varieties of options out there. So again, this is a work session. This is hopefully this, as you board members are looking at this, this is bringing up questions, and this is the time to ask questions and dig further into details. And no question is a you know, unwarranted or unwanted at this point. We want to make sure that we're all discussing the same things and understanding what's included in any sort of plan. So I'll just start very quickly here. There's two major columns. One is a budget plan for a new pre-K-12 building that's built out next to the hospital. And I'm stopping there. There is no wellness center component to this. There is no hospital partnership with this. This is a school that's functioning as a school for Bold Public Schools. It just happens to be built out next to the hospital. Okay? Is that understood? I think that's pretty clear. Now, why am I doing that? Well, as the last meeting we had Nate and Jackie, or it might not have been the last meeting, but the last meeting I was at, Nate and Jackie were there, and they talked about how the hospital is looking to move forward with a co-located facility. They are going to go through the technical kind of process to sell land, or not sell land, but provide the land that a school facility would be built on. So all those things are happening, right? But they're not to the point yet to say that a wellness center would be built at the same time, literally, as a school. They need kind of the understanding that a school is going to be built before they're going to move forward with their next steps. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing we're working back and forth here on. So this is a standalone school. We do not need the hospital for any component of this other than the land in which it's sitting on. Now, why is the land in which it's sitting on important? Well, because a future wellness center is expected and planned by the hospital, obviously, and would incorporate down the road with this school. So that's the reason that the land is important here and why we're discussing it. Now, I'm going to throw a little asterisk with this, and a caveat to that is the project with a wellness center could indeed be planned and developed and agreed and finalized and actually built at the same time as the school. So that option isn't off the table, that it's actually all built together and ends up finishing at the same time. Just for simplicity, I'm trying to keep that hospital component away from it so it doesn't confuse people on who owns what, who's operating what, how big is the school's portion versus a wellness center. Those are questions we don't have to answer when we know that it's just a school building built on the land next to the hospital. Does that make sense? So with this option though, the reason we talked about the benefits of building out with the hospital when they're building their wellness center is that there's some efficiencies of combined spaces, right? It makes sense that if two entities are building the same thing, if you will, talk about gyms or locker rooms, whatever it is, you share them and you utilize the same space instead of building duplicates of each other. So this as a standalone building isn't necessarily going to take advantage of all those options, because we have to assume that maybe that wellness center never happens. But it's very strong that it will happen. Hospitals giving every indication that they want to do it. They have money put aside to do it. They are full steam ahead. But this building then needs to be sized appropriately to serve the district's needs. So I just see a typo right here. This is 143. So this building is being programmed right now. And the word program means that actually it's been a while now, maybe even about a year. I sat down with Dale and with Mr. Metten and went through all the high school programming and staff and classes offered and all those things to come up with the square footage of a high school building, the high school component of a building. Elementary's a little easier because it's basically one second grade classroom is a second grade classroom, right? So we developed an overall building program, which came up to this 143,000 square feet. So that's what I'm basing it off of right now. What this includes, the only thing that's a little probably gonna give you some questions about is only a 2-station gym, okay? I'm gonna come back to that component in a second. So this is a 143,000 square foot building with a 2-station gym to house all pre-K through 12 students, okay? The reason I'm coming in with a 2-station gym is because that the wellness center would probably add 1 or 2-station gym as well. So in total, when that project happens, could happen again simultaneously, but let's say it happens in 5 years, 2 more stations come with you. So now you have 4 total stations theoretically to use as the high school. Obviously there's times and scheduling that would have to come into, play with using 4 stations, but I'm guessing we can figure that all out. So any questions around that? Just I want to stop there and make sure people are following what all those terms mean, what's happening.
What size of gyms are you talking, Ryan? Are
It
you
would be
talking one like Olivia or one like Rhode Island or one like somewhere else?
it would be similar to the Olivia gym, the main gym in Olivia, but probably a little larger. 2 full-size courts, so you can get 2 and everything around to be safe around 2 full-size courts, basketball courts. Sorry, that further defines it. Does that make sense?
What is your safe zone on these gyms?
That gives you 10 feet around the boundary, and then obviously you'd have in a gym like that, you have bleachers and things like that to hold. What your capacity is probably 1,000. I'm guessing somewhere in there.
Ryan, what's
Yeah.
Our capacity would not be quite as much as we have right now then, correct?
Well, again, this is what that's a perfect example. I'm starting somewhere. You tell me if I need to adjust, right? So you're asking a question. If you want to say, I want to make sure our gym has a capacity of 1,000 spectators, okay, I'll make sure that square footage matches that. That's what I don't want you to think I am limiting or this is all that we get to talk about. If that's a specification that this needs to meet, let's write it down and let's make sure we meet it. Because then I'll have to go back and I'll adjust a little bit, maybe plus or minus, and then come back to you again. So I want this to be kind of a working.
Ryan, will our activities director, Derek Flam, be pulled in on these conversations? That he clearly will know the needs of space for his programming, along with our FIAD people, whatever. I think it'd be really good to have information from him.
Yep. And yes is a simple answer. Haven't yet. So that's
Yeah.
a good discussion to have. There's this timing with understanding, or not timing, without a wellness center component being complicating the mix, and then how to build just big enough
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
right now, which keeps less cost, right? We don't want to overbuild because that means we're overpaying when a wellness center then gets potentially added, and now we've really overbuilt, right? So that's, but you're right, Melissa. We need to find that perfect line of what do we need to build now to make sure that we maintain all of our absolutes, but not overbuild. And then once the future long-range plan of a wellness center happens, we didn't grossly overbuild, right?
Yeah.
Trying to weigh that out together. But you're right. It's a conversation to have. The other component to this is leaving Bird Island Elementary off the discussion for right now. The Olivia building could potentially still be there in flux if a new building's built. That doesn't mean the Olivia building goes away the day that you take occupancy of the new building. So we can talk about there's some potential to use space over there still and how that functions. The long range plan is, if you can see here in these numbers, that I'm saying that the Olivia building goes away as well. But again, that's a discussion that we need to have. We need to understand what the board is thinking and some conversations around that. The difference is that Olivia building obviously needs to host students for sure, whether it's all of them or at least partial of them throughout this entire process. So we know it's not going away tomorrow by any means.
How many square feet does the Olivia campus have?
The Olivia building right now is about 150,000, but that includes the pool.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I don't have the pool square footage off the top of my head, but I'm going to say the pool is probably going to be roughly 20,000 square feet, plus or minus.
So are we going to continue to have the pool? Is that in the plan or not?
Again, that's what happens with the Olivia building is another discussion to have. So
Because
when we're planning a referendum, we have to plan for worst case scenario, right? So what I've included in here is the demolition of the Olivia building. That doesn't mean that once the referendum passes, you demo the building, right? That doesn't mean once you take occupancy of a new building that you demo the building. It just means we have the funds available. This amount of money will not be spent on anything other than the demolition of that building in a worst case scenario. The Department of Education, and I think maybe more importantly, the public will want to know what's going to happen with that building. So that's a discussion to have. Worst case scenario, it gets demoed, it's turned to green space, and the district does with what they need to with the land. You can sell the land for development, you can keep it for future, you can do whatever. That's, again, part of the discussion. One thing we don't have included in this new building out by the hospital is anything to do with your sports. That's going to stay out in the Olivia site. That's how I have it priced right now. I'm not saying we can price it to build the new football field and track and things like that with a new building. If that's, again, one of the priorities, the board is going to tell me that, nope, we need to have that included. We can include that. But right now, I have $1.2 million to fix the track and fix the football field to leave where it's at.
So what would be the purpose of leaving it where it's at if we're 1.5 miles, 2 miles away?
Probably about $4 million.
And do we have the room to do all this at the news site or not?
So you can see in that option, I have included land purchase of approximately 18 acres. So without that purchase, no, you would not have land available to build a athletic facility. Really, I mean, you'd be really tight with just the building as it is. So that's a critical component to the option is purchasing of additional land. And rightfully, the hospital is concerned as well. If they're providing 15 acres of land to build a new school, they would like to make sure that there's future considerations to any other sort of development and expansion that they might have too.
That's the issue we're going to run into.
So just throwing it out there, like Minnewaska High School, they have this brand new turf facility and it's for multiple uses. And I don't know exactly the final amount on the project, but I thought it was about 1.5 million. And, you know, besides track and field and football, they're able to use it for Phi Ed and not have additional grassland around for their multiple uses because it's turf and it doesn't wear and tear and, you know, each year. So I guess I would like to see what it would look like, you know, not needing all that extra land. You know, what are we doing with our Phi Ed classes when they need to go outdoors, you know, that kind of thing. If we have something like this on the table for discussion, you know, it might be something that would be possibly to be built in.
Yeah, and just to clarify, when you're talking Minnewaska and they're $1.5 million, that was probably the conversion of a grass field to turf.
Yeah. Okay.
That wasn't the football field creation and track around it. That's where I'm saying it's probably that with stands and concessions and all that stuff that typically goes with it is where you get into the, you know, $5, $6, $7 million. That's a project in itself.
Yeah. Okay.
So Ryan, you're talking the total amount we need for just the school is 18 acres or 14?
Well, you could build the school and the parking lot and the access and all that stuff on the 15 acres that the hospital that has available just to the east there of the hospital, right? So you could fit it there. You just couldn't do anything besides that then. So soccer fields for recess or, you know, ball fields for, you know, kickball or whatever, and definitely not football fields and tracks. You'd need the additional 18 acres to do any of that. So that's why I'm saying it should be included. That you want to plan on having that, whether or not you actually first day go out and build those fields. Now, again, you can say, you know what, first day we have to have those fields. So let's incorporate some, you know, baseball fields in a grass soccer field or something like that as well. And I can incorporate that into any option in two.
But if you incorporate it, we need the land to do it. Do we have the land there to do it?
Well,
That's
it's
an option or not.
yeah. I mean, it's assuming that so the land from all discussions would be available for sale. It isn't currently available for sale, but it's the same landowner that owned it when the hospital bought. So I think, Dale, maybe you've had some conversation, but that's.
I've had a conversation with them and they're willing to work with us on that. And they talked about what they did with the hospital there and very similar to that. So, but that was just initial because we haven't gone into anything to that point yet. So, but I think you're having a good discussion on a lot of different options here. And so I think what we're looking at is how much, you've got a lot of questions that would be answered when you get closer down the road. But I think what Ryan is giving us is a ballpark figure of an estimate of this is what it could be. And depending on what you add, that makes that price difference, or how much you cut back, or whatever you want to do. But and so I think he's showing some options for us.
Well, if we don't know we can get the land and at what cost, we can't really figure out whether we can put it aside or not.
The land is available.
But is it available right away, and it's at a different entity we have to go through to do that? Or is this all the same entity, or how does this all work? Because if you got 18 acres we're gonna do for the hospital, then how are we gonna do the balance with whatever landowner we're talking about? That's part of our equation here.
Right.
You're maybe what you're asking, Jeff, and hopefully it doesn't tip the cards some way down the road, but you're hedging, you're assuming that you can negotiate a purchase of land from an adjacent landowner with this. You can, and districts do, go out and buy land with the assumption that down the road they're going to build a building or develop whatever. That is an option. You guys may, I don't know if you want to spend your reserves on that right now and get that done without the public actually supporting the plan of going out next to the hospital. This is a common way to do it, to say, okay, you know what, we know we're going to need some land, we're going to put some money in, and we're going to, hopefully we're close with, and maybe we'll talk about whether it's 20,000 an acre or 30,000 an acre to budget, but we'll go talk to that landowner and negotiate a price of land purchase. And you're kind of hedging that you'll be able to get that done.
Ryan, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a real, which is impressive to me. I don't see a real difference in prices, how, now versus what it was.
Yeah, and I don't know if somebody circled that. I don't know. I didn't do that. The red circle, or is that?
I don't know what happened there either. So.
I thought you put that on, Ryan.
I didn't do that.
You did too.
I did. I don't think I did. Unless I
code other than you. But that's okay. So it wasn't going to happen.
I don't know how to get it off. But yeah, I don't know what that is. So yeah, previous, we had all sorts of different options previously in the 50s and the 40s, kind of going back and forth with what was included and what's not included. During this COVID experience, what we've been seeing is prices not only staying steady, but actually dropping in the public market. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, it's super expensive for me to build my addition on my house. Why is that? It's different, right? The public bid market is a different animal, a different beast altogether. The materials we use for your school, I'm assuming are going to be pretty standard, typical construction materials, nothing crazy and hard to get. So our prices that we're seeing for anything from a renovation project to a new school are 10 to 15% under our budgets that we set last year. So now, will that continue out? Because if you think about the timeline, a referendum in February, you design for almost a year and then you bid it out. So you're looking 2 years down the road before you start construction of anything. I do have a contingency for that I call it design development contingency. You could also include it or say it's maybe an inflationary protection contingency as well of 5%. Yeah, so I'm not doing that.
Touch anything.
Who's doing it?
It has to be Ryan, because I don't think anybody else can draw on his screen.
I'm not. My hands are in my lap. I don't know. It's.
Ryan,
Yeah.
looking again at the hospital site, can a school, football field, track, parking lot, and auditorium can fit in that space?
No, football field and track included with the school. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I also want to say, like, I know that the interest rates are at an all-time low right now too. So, I mean, does that factor into your numbers here as well, Brian?
It does and it doesn't, because you gain and you lose on that. It is an absolute awesome time. I think the previous, when we were showing tax impacts with these scenarios back last year when Mike was, at the community meetings and things like that, he was factoring, I want to say, around a 3.5%, maybe even 4% interest rate. We are seeing bonds being sold right now at 1.5%. So that is ridiculously low. Now again, is that going to last forever? No. Is the election going to probably play into that? Yep. Is it going to shoot back up to 4%? I doubt it. Probably. Again, I didn't do that.
I did that because I got a text from Jim to help me fix it. So.
Okay, but
you do it in the first place. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, the interest rate. The long and the short of it is the interest rates allow you to get a lot more actually deposited, what we call it, into your construction fund at 1.5% than at 3.5%. And it's a huge difference on tax impact, obviously, as well, because you don't have to cover that cost then. So that again, those numbers, the tax impact and all that good stuff, we will present to you once we get these more narrowed down to what the actual scope is, so we can then start talking about those numbers. That'll come next meeting or maybe the meeting after. But either way, we want to start with making sure we got everything included in scope or talk about scope items, and then we'll get into how that affects the actual tax impact.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, just to round out what I've included in here, so again, demolition of both buildings included. I'm not saying that has to happen. It's a worst case scenario, right? A new 143,000 square foot building to house K through, actually pre-K through 12. Site work and utilities is out there, but is out on the site right now, close, but you still have to connect to them. So there's some funds to connect to them. Land purchase, assuming again 18 acres at 20,000 an acre. Some work to the football field. Denny has expressed some pretty big concerns that the track is kind of crumbling apart and the grading of the football field is not optimal. So I'm including them out. We could lessen that. We could talk further about that. Look more at what is absolutely needed versus kind of redoing it. But either way, parking lot. We're going to have to build a parking lot out by the new school, so that's included there. Some of the site development costs to construct a parking lot are also included in the actual building cost. So that's at 500,000. Auditorium is over here. We'll talk about that in a second. FF&E and technology. These are big numbers, and they're items that you typically don't think about, maybe per se, to what goes into a building project. All the furniture, all the equipment, all those things that's not bolted to the building. That's what this covers. Desks, chairs, tables, equipment for shops, so CNC machines and maybe hydraulic lifts or anything like that goes into the building. That's what FF&E is. Technology is your security cameras, your smart boards, your infrastructure for cameras and networking and things like that. So you can see it's almost $2 million there, $1,750,000. That gives you a construction contingency. So that's left for when we're actually building. So anything that goes, if there's something we find something out on the land, we start digging, and all of a sudden there's stuff down there that we didn't know was down there, and we got to take care of it. It covers that. If we're building and some drawings are off and we need to change a dimension or something and it costs money, this covers that. That's the typical part of the process. Or if we're in the middle of building and we decide we want to change a wall because it would be better suited as we go through how the building's functioning, that's what this 5% is for. So that isn't, we get rid of it if we're secure. Nope, we keep that 5% until we start building. We hold that harmless from anything else. And then we get into all of the costs that it takes to put plans together. So that's architects, engineers, construction management, the testing, the plan review, the inspections, permitting, all of that stuff that's required is included in that number. Then like I said, I added a design development contingency. So between now and when it actually gets built, what are all the things that could potentially change? I did talk, Dale and I spoke with the city of Olivia. They were very, I want to say gracious or at least insightful on what they feel like their costs will be as far as connecting to sewer and water and things like that. Typically, those are large costs. The municipalities charge for that. They said they'd be willing to look at that and be pretty I don't know what the right word is, helpful in that, maybe to limit cost at all, which is a big deal in this whole grand scheme of things. So that gets you to a total of $49,971. You sell bonds in $5,000 increments, so $49,975 is just what that option is. So that's when we start talking about, well, we're going to go talk to, activities director. We're going to look at some things. You guys tell me you need 3 gyms instead of 2. We want to add the football field to this, all those different components. That's what we talk about now, and then I can refine that number and get it really close to where we need to be. Does that make sense?
Just in my ballpark, say it's 20,000 an acre for those 18 acres. And the football field. That's around $2 million, right?
Well, I have 360 for the land itself.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to build an actual, I'll call it stadium. People don't think U.S. Bank Stadium. Think
Right.
of a football field with a track around it with bleachers on either side, a press box, a concession stand, those types of amenities. That's going to be an additional $5 to $6 million.
5 to 6?
Yeah, it's spendy stuff. That's why I don't have it included there, because it's enough of an eye opener.
So you got 1.2 there for the football field.
That's touching up your existing field.
Oh.
That's
okay.
making your existing field and your existing track. That's extending the life of those items.
Okay. And you got on there just K through 12 building,
Yeah,
not a pre.
Pre-K.
I'll do that.
How about with the daycare in there?
Well, I guess simple answer is no. I mean, how a daycare functions and the timing of that versus pre-K and scheduling and how that all works together. If we need to talk about what that needs to do and how that would look inside of a building, what kind of square footage we're talking about, that's something we can address too.
That was one topic that was brought up, and maybe Jeff is thinking of that with the connection with the hospital.
Yeah.
With that class and having a child care unit, and so those are the things that they have talked about with the hospital. And so that would be one of the advantages of working with them out there and with the nursing program we have, the medical field we have, and so forth. So yeah, those are the types of things we've thrown around. And so that all can be.
I don't, Ryan, maybe, do you want to put like football field track/track work existing or something, maybe in something, so we keep that straight. Thank you.
Anything else that we should?
Dale, that you were talking about that, was the
Question
hospital?
for you. It says, we just added, it says maintenance to existing football field and track, but that's underneath a new building. Those are two different,
Okay, so
Yep.
we've just been talking about,
yeah,
so
I hear what you're saying, but it's also, when you start adding just maintenance to existing football field, that takes away that you're gonna build a new football field underneath this, where a new school site.
Ryan.
Yeah. I'll
Okay?
let me.
It's under other though too. So I mean, I don't look at it as like, it's
But-
just what you do if you have a new, that maintenance is tied there. There's no,
How's that? So it's under the Olivia Junior Senior High building.
Okay.
Okay, that's better. Might just help us keep it straight.
Yep.
Dale, you were talking about that daycare. Was the hospital going to put that up, or were they talking us doing it? Or I can't remember how that went.
Well, we just talked that was an option if in their classes that they could work with the school district on, and kind of piggyback on what they're doing right now. But childcare could be something that they would be very interested in, just because of their employees and their families. And so they were just throwing it out as, this is something we could consider. And so when you start talking about that, you really start brainstorming around lots of different options. And so, but I think what Ryan is trying to get here is the basis of a project. And then you go from there and give and take back and forth until you get comfortable with one. But this is just an example here, an estimate that he's put out for a long period of time now. And so just to let people know.
That's one of those things, Jeff, similar to what we were talking about before with Melissa and the gyms. It might be a good conversation that does get planned on whenever that other component gets built, as opposed to overbuilding now and not necessarily having either operational funds or any idea of what might that daycare be, but waiting for that to be added to it as part of that wellness center component. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but would we be able to go out and get money to do that if we did it through the school, or would that be done through the hospital?
I think if I remember correctly, what they said is that they were going to, you get community input on what the county's needs are. And so if that's something is a daycare, that's something that they'll welcome as an idea, and then they can look at for the wellness center. That's how I remembered it.
Well, I didn't know where it was ended up, so that's why I threw that out there. Because I know at one time we were talking about that in the high school.
Yeah, and I don't think there's enough interest, right? I mean, if I can remember correctly.
I don't remember how it all went.
I'm going to go back to what I just talked about. We moved maintenance to existing football field, track, etc., underneath this junior, senior high. We took it away from others. Is that, because I don't see down below here, where it says build a new, 143,000 square foot building. I don't see now anything related to football fields.
That's our existing football field and track. It's not a new one.
So, John, this option includes only repairing your current football field and track. You will continue to use that for the foreseeable future.
Okay,
We are not planning, at least this option, I was not planning on you building a new football field and track
Because
Okay.
it was how much, I mean, it's like
because it's expensive.
$600
right.
extra.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
We want to make sure you obviously have a football field and track
Right.
for your district. This is making the most, I'll say, cost-effective way to make sure that that happens.
Okay,
You could choose to do nothing to it. Then he might have a panic attack, but that's also an option, right? You don't have to do that. But this is, yeah, I just want to make sure that every line item that's on here, you guys understand what it is. And if this is about as least amount of options in this building as I could, I didn't want to throw in an option for a football field and track. I didn't want to throw in an option for an auditorium. I didn't want to throw in an option for, multiple gyms. I just wanted to keep it super simple and say this is a, kind of what you'd need to probably build a new building and operate as simple as possible. But we can add all these different components and see what their impact is as well. So that's moving to the next couple columns. I know you guys have asked, you're going to get asked by the public, what about an addition to Olivia, right? If Olivia has at least one section of the building that is very viable, right? The newest addition to that building is very viable. How do we take advantage of that? Well, okay, so we build on next to it. Everything that would be included in here, we build on next to that and just use that for those younger grades. So what does that mean? We'd still have demolition of Bird Island Elementary, assuming that that's the direction that the board goes. We'd still have demolition of most of the Olivia building. We would still be fixing the football fields. We have less square footage, so it's less cost. We still have to connect to utilities. It actually might be more difficult because the utilities that are out there are going to have to be maintained while we're building a new building and then connecting to it. So I'm leaving that. We're not necessarily going to save money there. We don't have to buy land because we have the site. The parking lot, you have a nice parking lot, but we're probably going to have to do some work to make sure that we can connect to it and use it and all that stuff. So we don't have as much of a new parking lot, but we have some. We still would want, let's just keep it apples to apples, buy furniture for that building, put all the technology in it that you would with a new building. So those numbers stay the same. We still carry the same construction contingency. The percentages for architectural testing, management, all of that stay the same. So you can see a difference there, approximately $8 million, okay? So that's not insignificant. What this doesn't do, though, is provide any future connection to any sort of wellness center. So now you have everything you probably need to have, but you're losing that potential component of all those potential things with the hospital and that component. So is that worth $8 million to the district? That's a discussion for you guys to. I think it's, we've talked about this option pretty much the entire time. I just wanted to add some clarification since I was updating the new building option. I wanted to update this as well, just so you guys understand that. So everybody that's going to ask questions to you about it can see it, that it's been done, and that you've analyzed it and you've thought about it. So that's there. Any questions regarding that scenario?
What would it cost to fix the track? The existing one?
Well, I think so. Out of the $1.2 million, I'm budgeting about that 250 to 300 for the track itself, and then the rest is for the football field, grading, getting it stands, all that stuff out there, updating that.
So we got to grade the existing football field right now?
That's where your big problem is. It would be the, let me get my direction, south side of that whole site kind of drops.
Okay.
But it is usable. I mean, we've been using it that way for the last how many years, right? So it's not like it has to be done. Correct.
You know, it's, I don't, hopefully that this comes across the right way. You don't have to do anything. By not having to do anything is what gets you into the position that you're in with Bird Island and Olivia buildings.
Which I get that. I'm just saying if that was where we had to tweak something.
Yeah, obviously this is not a, it's much less of an educational driving thing, right? It's extracurriculars, it's
Right.
those types of things. Obviously FIAD can use the field and all that. But it just, yeah.
Well, no, and I
It
get
is an
that.
area that,
I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying, I mean, thinking about where you could tweak if you had to when you budget things. I mean, and then the district-wide allowance, you got still $1 million there and 750,000. To me, you wouldn't have that much there. If you're already going to continue to use part of the school you're doing, those numbers would go down. They should go down because you're not completely putting all
I guess
this.
it's an absolute question, legitimate question, and it's also a legitimate question if you build a new school, right? We would want to obviously take inventory and use whatever we can out of your current buildings.
Right.
That's you know, we want to do that. Today's though, at a call it 150,000 square foot building, $1 million in furniture you'll blow through in no time at all. And you'll probably be asking for more. Like where did, you know, it's just, it's amazing how much furniture and things like that cost. Now you do get some return with that because what you are buying is some flexibility and some multi-purpose ability with all the furniture and equipment that are available today. So it allows you to do a lot of things that you can't currently do with just a standard row of desks and chairs in a classroom. So the investment is worth it in my eyes because educationally it provides so much more than what you're probably thinking of what was in your classroom of just a simple desk and chair.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, those numbers can be massaged, of course. And of course, technology is technology. I mean, you'll install technology in a new building or a renovation and it'll be outdated in, you know, a year and a half, right? That's just the way technology works. So we try to prepare for infrastructure and things like that to let you move and you know, go with the flow of technology.
Ryan, just real quick, I know I've talked a little bit about the maintenance of the existing football field track. If there was demolition of the Olivia building, you know, when teams come in, they utilize our locker room space and so forth, but that would not be existent on the Olivia campus if there's demolition. So that would be another question I would have of housing teams when they arrive. And, you know, that I'm throwing it out there.
You know, I think now that I'm thinking about it, I did have a component of this $1.2 million to build a small pole structure. I think 3,000 square feet is what I included in there, so that it wouldn't be heated and plumbed and all of that, but during a football game, at least you could have basically some 2 large size classrooms as team rooms that the teams could go in and during halftime and sit. So, and then when they're not being used for that. They could be storage for stuff out on that site.
So no
What are
shower.
they doing? What are they doing now during the COVID?
They're not using any locker rooms. I mean,
Right.
when like the kids go, they get in the bus in their assigned seat with their equipment on as much as possible. I'm sure, you know, they're not wearing their shoulder pads
Right.
and stuff in the bus, but yeah, no, they're not using any of that.
And so no shower. I mean, we're talking no shower room, right? Ooh, that would be an awful smell. Ooh.
Sorry, it's just being used as a team room, right? So it's only being used for that halftime kind of experience for those kids. Other than that, it's storage. So don't think of it as, you know, that's where they're going to go and disrobe after the game and hang their equipment and then go home. Nope, they would still go, you know, to the locker rooms back at the other facility to do that.
Ryan, do you typically see, like, I know we talked about part 1, part 2, you know, part 3, you know, how many questions you typically see on building bond ballots? You know, I'm just wondering if there could be further conversation down the road or whatever to include something like this so we have an idea of
Yep.
what it could look like.
Yeah, so I'll get to this column here. So an auditorium has been talked about quite a bit too, as far as part of a plan, and I think, you know, semi-supported with depends on how you look at it with the survey, but an auditorium or a football field or a football field could be a part of a second question or a second and a third question on a referendum for sure. We see that quite a bit. You know, it becomes kind of, if it's really, the question you're going to want to ask yourself, if it's really important and it is a need of the district, why would you include it in a second question? Because if you need it, you need it. There is no, don't leave it out there for somebody to say no. The theory is maybe somebody who is in support of everything else of a new school doesn't support the auditorium, at least gives them the chance to support the new school, but not the auditorium. So, you know, both psychologies exist, but when you start getting into every additional $1 million kind of increment, it's going to start to cause a tax impact jump. We have to be really mindful of what that looks like in total. Because if you get, you know, obviously too much on the plate, then nobody's going to support it at all.
But if you don't have enough on there, they may not support it either.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult position, right?
That's what you're
I just
trying
know,
to
even
figure out.
like the auditorium situation, we have community support with our fine arts and our musical and that kind of thing. And I'm just throwing it out there, but I could see that being a really high need, and being that in column A with the option B of the second question of, you know, the football track.
Right.
That's, in my first thought, that's where I see that being better fit.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be a really, really good selling point. But I mean, that's just where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think when you start talking about multiple questions, there's lots of data out there now that that helps you make those decisions of what you can and cannot do, and with that. But I think you've got a lot on the table right here, and I think it gives you lots of avenues to go down and to take a look at. And so I thank Ryan for putting this all together. I think there's a lot there, and it gives you a lot to think about.
So Ryan, if we're talking about in the future a football field track, is there a way that you have the excavation there existing right away? If we build a new building, can they just add that part to it and not the other part, or not? How can you do that?
I'm not sure if I follow exactly. Can they build the football field and the track at the same time as a building?
At least the landscape part of it, the infrastructure or the levelness of the field and everything, and then in the future,
Yeah, I mean,
grass or the
that's,
stands or whatever. And
yeah, it's feasible to get it close, right? I mean, it then depends on how you obviously manage and take care of that space. If it's actually then maintained, meaning mowed and irrigated and things like that, it has a better chance of staying the way it is. If you just are grading a field to have it close and then let it sit for 5-6 years, it might not be what you need it to be when you decide to actually build a football field. But there might be some efficiencies with that without going extreme on producing a stadium-esque or a high school football field quality field. The thing with it is if you just do a field and later on you come back and you do a track, and then you're probably going to disrupt some of the things that you did previously with the new things that you're putting in. So are you actually saving money, or are you spending money that maybe you shouldn't be? There's schools of thought to that and how far you go with it. And, fields of today with irrigation and plumbing and stormwater management, it's difficult to kind of have it. You kind of do it or don't do it kind of thing in my eyes. But there might be people out there that can speak to the other way and say, I'll just grade a field and go play on it. But I do know that high school league doesn't allow playoffs and things like that now on fields that aren't turf. So if you build a field and you don't have it artificial turf, you don't get the option to hold sections and things like that. So
with turf, that means you got to have cement laid down, or what?
Typically there's a curb, yes. Whether it's cement or another material, you can choose different things. But yeah, typically there's a curb and gutter system around the inside of a track, if you will, and the outside of a football field, and that carries the water. A lot of times, the ground out there, I think you have a drainage system that's not too far off, so you might be able to get the water to go over there and follow that drainage system. Building fields here in the cities, they put basically ponds underneath the field. They bring in huge semi-truck looking tanks and bury them under the field, because all the water then just goes and sits in those tanks. And because they cannot, in the cities, you're not allowed to take the water off your site, right? It's got to stay there. So if you can't handle it by just dissipating into the ground, you got to store it until it can. So they fill up a football field worth of big empty tubes.
I don't know how they're built, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's an expensive system. I mean, you got to dig down probably 6 feet and start coming back up. I mean, there's the field we just built. Well, I shouldn't say just. They took occupancy and had last year's games on it in West St. Paul. The field surface itself it was some obscene number, handle 30 inches of rain an hour or something. It was ridiculous how much water they design those things to handle. So it's not a simple system by any means.
That's why it gets so expensive then.
That's why they get expensive.
Well, I didn't realize what the reasoning was behind it. I thought it was just level the dirt and put it down,
Well, you, me, that's what we played on.
Yep.
Not good enough today.
Oh, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Okay, where are we at here on our agenda?
So this is, I think, pretty much all of the agenda bullets kind of talked about this, right? different options, different budgets, different scenarios. So I just need to know, from your perspective, is this answering all your questions? What other questions does this bring up as we move forward here? I want to make sure that anybody has a question, it's getting answered. And if it's not answered tonight, I'm following up and sending them to you.
Can we put a contingency in there of building a football field and track? Put it in there with a question mark behind it, the cost of it and stuff. So at least we got an idea.
Yep.
And I would say, Jeff, are you thinking turf?
Whatever I guess the state requires, yeah, turf.
Yeah, I mean, I would say since they already have an existing grass field, turf would definitely be something I would like to hear about.
So are you going to add another column?
Yeah.
Like
So I can just add another column in here. Yep.
Okay.
If we're gonna do it right, and then we can have sections or whatever.
At least then we can pick and choose what we want to go forward with at this point.
Ryan, and you had mentioned, pulling the activities director in with some different conversations as well, just hearing what he would think about the 2-station gym. And I think that would be appropriate moving forward to hear some feedback from that department.
Jill, do we know where these notes are coming from?
I don't know. I will clear it away. I'm going to fix that I can't do it right now, but I have to do it when I'm not in Zoom here. So.
Just curious.
Question, are we gonna get a copy of this page?
I can send it out to you.
Okay.
Why don't you send this to me tomorrow, Ryan, and that, and then also the review of the public hearing, that the changes we made. If you could do that, and then I can get that out to the board, and we'll publish the public hearing, get it to the paper tomorrow morning. So, but I think what we're asked, Ryan, to do is to put some basic numbers there, and because you hear all kinds of stories, and I've been told that the price of a building has gone up 80 to 90% with COVID, and so I think Ryan is dealing on a daily basis of all this. So I think those are the types of things it's easy to make comments about if we don't know, and so I think that's what Ryan is putting out here to take to look at and to have a discussion on with the board. So.
What happens, Ryan, if we get to a point, we say we pass this and we pass it telling everybody it's 49, and then when we actually get to the end, it's like 54.
Well, that's my job, right? That's my job, to make sure that 49 gets you what you are expecting.
Okay.
And beyond that, I guess the simple answer to the question is there is no other option. You get 49.9. That's it.
And you pay the balance?
Right. Yes.
All right, I'll take your word for that.
You know what? I'm confident enough to say absolutely I would pay the balance, because at this point I've never had to pay the balance in my life. So I'd be okay with that. But no, that's why we have some of these things in here, the contingencies that are noted here. The dollars per square foot are, I'm constantly, we're building $500 million worth of construction stuff in K-12 education in schools right now. So I'm constantly going back to our construction side and verifying numbers and seeing where we are at, just to make sure that we're covered. So it's a learning process for us every day, just to make sure, okay, what we planning, is it accurate? So hopefully that gives you confidence.
Dumb question for you. Has Wold been kept up to date on all this stuff? Are they in the picture at all or not?
I work with Wold on a number of other projects, so I'm always keeping them in the loop. If at some point it makes sense to have them in here, but they're probably at this stage, not this time isn't well spent for them. They'd probably be more in the design phase. So that's why they haven't been part. But no, I'm not keeping them out for any particular reason, just for saving some time.
Okay, well, I didn't know how it was going, so that's why I
Yeah.
asked.
Okay, so have we covered everything in 3, communications and next steps?
Did you put that in that column for the football field and the auditorium?
I'm keeping notes on a separate page, just so yeah, I have the notes and I'll get those in there.
Do you want to see that tonight? Is that what you're?
No, when it gets to Dale, it'd be fine.
Yeah, I'll fill that out and send it to you. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to kind of tie up what's happening or what we're thinking the schedule is right now, we know that I'm going to call it just the 1st of November is kind of the timeline in which we need to have some of those decisions made, right? That's the review and comment time. So these line items that I have identified here is where we at minimum need to know what's happening, right? Because I need to describe that to the Department of Education of what's happening within the project. Things like whether or not there's a daycare included, the Department of Education isn't going to get that specific understanding because that will be a pretty minor component to the whole facility. But whether or not we're building a football stadium or a stadium, they'll want to know because that's going to be a pretty sizable item, right? So we can leave some information to be vague and allow us to implement certain components when design is happening. Other components we need to know. Jeff, we will need to tell the Department of Education that the plan is to buy land and to buy 18 acres adjacent to the property. We need to say that. So
Okay.
that doesn't mean we do not have to say we have purchased land. We can say that we plan on buying 18 acres next to the hospital property. And that would be sufficient. If the land doesn't come through, well, then we're going to have to figure out what to do, because that's
Okay.
going to be something that we need to do, down the road. But the review and comment, that's the kickoff to all this. So we need to have all the scope components identified, and we need to know the costs of those. That's the review and comment. That gets then submitted to the state, the Department of Education. Then after that, at the end of November in your board meeting, is when you'd actually approve to go out for a referendum. So they're 2 separate things, and I'm trying to talk about this over and over again so we all understand it. The review and comment is separate than the actual board approved resolution to go for a special election. So the review and comments first, but it has all the components of what's going to be included in that resolution that happens at the end of November. So it's not to say that it's a done deal, that once the review and comments submitted that we already know then what the resolution is. There is the ability to have some flux. We can amend the review and comment, but when you amend the review and comment, you then start the time frame over again. So the Department of Education gets 60 days to review it. We submit it on the right time, that's great. If we amend it, that 60-day review period then starts when we amend it. And that can then kick us out of the appropriate time for the approval for the Department of Education that you need in order to go out for a referendum. So it's technical. That's how elections work, right? You have to have things in at certain dates, and you have to have approvals, and you have to have hearings and all those good things. So that's why the dates are set the way they are. Yeah, it gives us a little time after the review and comment is submitted to have the lawyers draft up the packet of information for a referendum, which is very similar to the same packet of information that you saw last year when you did the operating levy. There's some differences to it, of course, because this is talking about building, but overall it kind of looks the same. The process of an election and all those good things.
So you need the auditorium in there also, or just the land purchase?
we would, if the auditorium is going to be part of it, whether it's a part of a single question, whether it's an additional question, we would need to know that as well. Yep, we would need to know all the different parts and components.
So we would have to make a decision on the auditorium and the
Mhm.
football field other than the land purchase of 18 acres.
Yep, you'd need to know all of those things.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Mhm.
Brian, earlier conversation, your presentation, you made a comment about elementary schools are cheaper to build than high schools, something to that effect. What kind of cost are you looking at? A general number.
Yeah, I guess I don't recall saying that, but that is true to an extent. Elementary schools, because they don't offer some of the technical spaces that high schools offer, and they don't typically have some of the very costly spaces like locker rooms and things like that that high schools have. So they are cheaper. Maybe cheaper isn't the right
Also,
word. Less expensive.
you mentioned too, Ryan, that when you set up a alignment for elementary, you got a class of 30 or 30 students. You have 2 sections, so you have 2 classrooms per grade level. Where in high school, you're going to get a math class of 15 instead of a full class of 30, or what with all electives, you're adding classrooms plus areas of life skills, of FFA and all that. So it's definitely be a much more of a expenditure for a high school than it will be a.
My question was simply, what's the cost per square foot?
Yep.
Yeah, so you
Well,
can see,
that's for elementary school.
yeah, right here you can see I'm kind of using a blended rate of what I would price a new elementary school versus a new high school. Just for some reference, we're going through the process in Annandale to build a new high school only, 912, and I'm using 265 a square foot. Here I'm using 230. A new elementary school, we might be closer to 220 a square foot for construction. These are construction costs. So you can see I'm kind of trying to be in the middle a little bit, but
Right.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions? Wow.
I know it's you don't know what you don't know, so you don't necessarily know what questions to ask. But yeah, I mean, if anything pops up, like definitely, feel free. And of course, even outside this arena, if you have a question, email Dale, and obviously I'll get to him as quickly as possible with a response. But yeah, very very simply put, again, the nuance with the whole wellness center is something, not to take lightly and don't forget about. What we're trying to do here is make sure that we've planned for a school facility that you guys can operate and function in if a wellness center never happens. That's as simple as it goes. My vision and hope would be that wellness center becomes a component of it, and it's actually, even though the funding and everything for that is hospital provided and they take care of all that, it actually happens all together. That would be awesome to be able to have it just come to fruition at one time.
Ryan, how much square feet would we need just for a high school? How many acres?
Well, your high school, if you just built a 912 high school?
Yeah. Or 712.
Well, what you're sitting on, I think, is pretty appropriate. You're sitting on 24 in Olivia, somewhere in there.
Okay. So we wouldn't need to buy any extra land
If you stayed on that site.
Yeah. No, on the other site. On the
Well,
hospital site.
What the hospital is saying they have available is 15 acres.
And that would not be enough for a 712?
Um,
Can I ask a question? I'm just wondering why we're like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that we voted last July to do pre-K through 12. Like, why are we going backwards?
Well, just where are the elementary kids going to go?
Right.
I'm just asking, maybe it's cheaper to build a school rather than buy more land. Like a 712 on the site that's there by the hospital.
Then we're
Maybe
still
we have
operating
enough.
buildings.
Well,
So-
maybe we'd have enough room without buying another $500,000 worth of land.
Then we're still maintaining a 100-year-old building.
And we're gonna have to spend more money to update that and then probably increase our levy in order to operate 2 buildings. I don't,
Well, I'm just trying to put figures together. It's all I'm doing.
okay, well, we're adding, I feel like, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we're adding more figures if we,
yeah,
Delta.
I mean, I see what you're saying, Jeff. You know, why not just build a smaller school by the hospital to take advantage if there's a future wellness component, and then maintain the Olivia building for everybody that's not out there, right? That's kind of what you're getting at?
Pretty much, and we don't have a lot of, I mean, we can do things better in the future maybe that way. I don't know. I'm just throwing something out.
In that scenario, you know, like what has been said currently, and some of this you'll see in the presentation for the Bird Island next week. You know, you're operating at about 250,000 square feet, including the pool, and you only need about 145. So
For a complete school or just
yeah,
high school?
for your whole enrollment. So if you're looking at building a smaller building out by the hospital, you still have again 150,000 square feet in Olivia. That's more than you need right there, right? So it doesn't become necessarily a question of could you use it. I'm sure you could. It's you're in the predicament you're in because you're operating too much square footage and you can't maintain it, and it is inefficient. So that it'll put you right behind the 8 ball again. That's probably not, I would assume,
Well,
where you want to go.
I was just trying to compare, you know, because you said roughly 220 for elementary per square foot or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for the high school, like you're talking is like 240 maybe?
230.
230?
Well,
Okay.
the one I'm
Yeah.
got out here is 230. Yep.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out, if it would be cost effective or not.
There and in all of these planning efforts, first cost is one consideration, right? Coming out, how much is it going to cost to build is one consideration. What the long-term cost is another consideration that goes into it. How you know,
Right.
what are the maintenance overall? What are the operations overall? You know, those are other components to that weigh in equally, I would say.
Okay. All right. Well, you kind of answered my questions. Thank you.
Kinda.
I might have more, so who knows?
And I think, you know, a lot of this information is on our website. So you know, we can do some studying on that too, and go back to, Jamie said it seems like you're kind of backpedaling right now.
Well, I might be, but I'm just looking at all
Yeah.
angles that
And that's good. And that's what we need to do. And that's what you're, as a board member, that's what you're elected to do. So, but I think the numbers that Ryan put is a starting point now. And you've asked a lot of good questions, and he's got lots of different answers. And so that was our goal tonight. But I think it was to look at different options, the sizing of the buildings and so forth. And so, and also I think really focus on the future. where do you want the Bold School District to go? And I think have that looking at the district as down the road in the future, and not just to satisfy the needs today, because they change daily. So keep that in mind too. Build something that when you're all said done, you're proud, and it's going to function the way you want it to function, and be real for the district. So big project to take a look at and to work on. So good.
Dale, I got another question for you.
Oh,
When we do that ORTH benefit, do you know how many numbers come to that? Anybody? I don't, it doesn't just have to be for Dale.
well, I don't, it's packed, but it's wherever they have it. They pack the gym in Glencoe, they pack it in here. And so, yeah, so.
But that's something we gotta look at on our sizing.
Well, but you're not going to build a building just for that one benefit.
Correct.
For one,
Correct.
I mean, we did
But-
that. So when we built when I helped building, I didn't build anything, but when we were building a jewelry store, it was, you know, okay, so what are your needs? What are your needs currently? What are your needs? What do you think you're going to be? You know, you're never going to think of all the things that are going to happen. But at that time, we had a product called Pandora. And I said, you know, I just said, hey, where's Pandora going? Because it's kind of a high traffic item. Well, that was, you know, 6 years ago. Today, we no longer have the product. So luckily, you know, the architect said, you're not going to build this building for Pandora. And I said, okay, fair enough. And I'm glad we didn't, because we'd have a lot of space that we'd have to revamp. So, I mean, things change. And I you know, I get what you're saying, Jeff, but it's just that would be like one day.
The building adage would be you don't build the church parking lot for Easter Sunday.
Right.
Yeah, you do.
If you want to maintain a large parking lot.
Right.
So what I'm basically asking, I don't know what the capacity in the Rhode Island gym is. Melissa, do you know that?
Not offhand, Jeff. I don't know exactly what it is.
Because everybody tells me the Rhode Island one's bigger than the Olivia one. I don't know if that's true or not, as far as capacity wise.
I don't know either.
I think these are good questions for Derek. I mean, he can help with answering some of these up front, Ryan.
Yeah. I'll definitely get in touch with him and ask that. You know, if it is, and I'm just going by memory, I'm trying to put myself in those gyms. They can't be too far off. And if it is, it's just because it's set up differently, not because the box is any different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The volume of space could be the same, but maybe it's just set up a little different to allow more people over there. But
Now, Ryan, with these stations you were talking about, are they consecutively together, or is there space in between them, or what are you talking there?
yeah, it's a good question, and that comes up quite a bit, especially when districts start talking about field houses and all these different things where you get into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 station gyms. That kind of thing is left up to design. So it can be just one big box that has 2 basketball courts side by side in it that maybe has a net that comes down between them and keeps them separate if there's a tournament or something, or it could be 2 different boxes, 2 different, you know, but that's we don't necessarily get into all those nitty-gritty details before we know that there's a project. There's a lot of those questions that come down to you know, once the referendum passes, then you start talking to the users and the stakeholders and things like that to get all the different input you need to understand which way to go.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or anything else we need to know, Ryan or Dale, before next Monday? All right.
We'll get the posting out of the meeting, and people can see what they need to do to participate in that public hearing. But again, it's a listening session for you as a board and as school personnel to listen to what the public has to say, and then take it away from there, and then you process it, and we have a discussion with it amongst the board. So that's the purpose of the meeting, and I think it'll be a very good meeting. It'll be hopefully very positive and getting good information to collect from everybody. And so I think we'll start with that. But this is good information, Ryan, to get started on. And but I share that it isn't new information. It's information we've had along, but I think now it's getting to where some decisions need to be made. So good. Go ahead.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I think we should finish up here. So hearing nothing else, we'll say goodbye and thank you all for sticking with us for the 2 hour and 19-minute meeting.
That's it?
Just practice.
Quite bad because I started the recording. So, all right. Okay. Thank you all very much. Have a good